Today, we're uncovering a 6-figure plant scam. A mom and pop plant shop that has turned into a national fraud, whose biggest supporters were then scammed by them. A scammer who has benefited from deceptive GoFundMes and has been locked out of their plant shop for over $22,000 of unpaid rent, has multiple court cases against them, silenced previous employees with NDAs, had their Etsy store shut down, and sent cease and desist letters via text to negative reviewers. A Texas plant shop that has lost their way. This is the story of Planted Roots and its owners, Edward Hartman and Alexis Short. I'm not trying to expose good people.
For sure. Well, they're not good people.
Started feeling very scam-like.
The year's 2018. Eddie Hartman and Alexis Short start selling plants from their home in Fort Worth, Texas. It starts with local plant sales, Facebook sales, and little pop-ups. By 2019, the couple is selling plants on Etsy, the perfect time to catch the COVID plant boom. By September 2020, their Etsy shop is booming with sales and reviews. They're actually getting multiple 5-star reviews per week. At first, people seemed very happy, but the pressures of 2020 begin to weigh on them as they fall behind on orders. But if you can't fulfill orders, you refund them or you communicate honestly. There is a fork in the road here for Eddie and Alexis, and this is where the problems begin. Like all scammers, they lure you in with rock bottom pricing, which always seems too good to be true, because it is. They usually tell you that if you add anything else to the order, it'll be a huge discount off. Then you pay with Zelle, Venmo, or a Cash App directly to Alexis Short or Edward Hartman. Next, you wait for your plants. There's excuses like car trouble. You wait longer, there's more excuses like Eddie's other job or changing banks, everything from children being sick to eviction to having trouble finding your plant, even while it's being relisted to be sold to another person. And when your patience runs out and you ask for your money back, they block you from their Facebook group, their Instagram account, and they stop replying to all of your texts. So you try and do a chargeback, but since you paid with Zelle, Venmo, or Cash App, there is no way to get your money back. You can request for the money back from them, but they won't pay you. And sometimes even if you pay with a credit card, the chargeback will decline due to the reason of insufficient funds to withdraw from. Meanwhile, they're selling the exact same plant you bought on their next Facebook purge or on Instagram stories to the next unsuspecting buyer. That was their hustle. Double or triple selling. They get a rare plant in stock and sell it in person, then restock it again in the next Facebook purge. A previous employee explains.
They would start listing the stuff that sold in shop. They would double sell plants.
Intentionally.
I believe it was intentional. We had like an employee group chat. Eddie and Alexis would text us. We would tell them this has already sold because a lot of the plants were pretty identifiable, especially when you got to the more rarer stuff. We would tell them that those things have already sold. They kind of would shrug us off, say, oh, we have another one, but this one looks better, so we're going to use pictures of it. Things like that. Things that you kind of know are kind of morally, shitty, but it's your boss because you can't really say much to them.
Next, we learn how frequent customers were prioritized.
And that's when I realized how much I had gotten duped because I was that customer coming in buying constantly. And those are the customers they would keep happy. If you're the one that only bought a plant here and there, then most likely you're going to have your plant sold to someone else. But then when I saw the list, I realized I now owned the majority of these plants on these lists that were owed to other people.
And many times use that same exact photo to sell that same plant multiple times. This actually coincides with people saying when they were missing plants from the plants that they purchased, they always got their common plants, but they never got their more rare plants, which totally makes sense.
They admitted to what they were doing of not providing the plants and overselling because they needed the money to pay this rent or something, so they took the money in front of them.
Once Facebook groups caught on to this tactic, they moved it over to Instagram stories. An ex-affiliate of the business describes how Eddie first figured this out.
With Instagram stories, he can control the comments. So this is how he explained it to me. He can control where people can't see the other people commenting. He explained it as if it was because he didn't want the the bad people sabotaging him by making bad comments. But I later realized, like, it's because other people can't see that other people are buying it. So you have a better chance at selling it to multiples when you're doing the story or the reels, because other people don't see all the sold comments.
Due to the lack of a comment section on IG stories, they're able to sell that plant multiple times behind the scenes on IG DM. One time, they even sold a Florida beauty to a customer for 25% off, instantly regretted it, then asked the customer to pay a higher price for the plant that they agreed upon. Naturally, the customer refused this increase in price after the fact. Eddie then sent an employee to go pick up the plant. He wouldn't even go himself. Then they sold that same plant for the same exact price. The problems were popping up on Etsy too. Take this poor Etsy buyer for instance. After they place an order, Eddie uses the excuse of losing $75,000 of plants to weather, which if it actually happened definitely sucks, but that's the risk of doing business and definitely not your customer's fault. The buyer is super chill about it. Eddie and the team then blame the next delay on the holiday weekend. Then finally, 51 days after the order had been placed, the customer gets annoyed, and Eddie uses the birth of their kid to delay even more. Then the buyer writes a negative review, which makes sense, and then the company holds the plant hostage until the buyer updates the review to being positive. Naturally, the buyer says they'll update it when they get the plants that they ordered. The buyer points out that manipulating customer reviews is a really shady business practice. Eddie or Alexis then through messaging say they don't care, cancel the order, and reply to their negative review that their plants had shipped out, even though nothing had ever shipped out. This happened so many more times that after putting them in Etsy jail multiple times, Etsy would eventually shut down their shop completely. Just in their Google reviews, the word scam is mentioned 14 times, and they carry 69 one-star reviews on Google. They have an F rating with 15 complaints with the Better Business Bureau in the last year. And Alexis Short has multiple financial judgments against her, which are publicly searchable in Tarrant County. As does their LLC, which was taking a small claims court in 2021 for not paying a Hoya vendor. We posted in local Fort Worth plant groups to get people's experiences of planted roots, and we tallied over $43,000 of owed monies to customers, landlords, and known associates. And that's just who responded in 24 hours with over 200 comments in the thread. There were hundreds of the same story, unfortunately, of Eddie and Alexis taking advantage of these kind people, and more continue to come in at the time of this recording. Planted Roots caught wind of us doing this investigation and negatively reviewed our business and left us multiple one-stars calling us the scammers, which is absolutely laughable and exactly what scammers do. Some people were not able to talk to us freely due to NDAs, but they could confirm that these were not innocent people running Planted Roots LLC. By the end of the year, they were behind over $30,000 in unpaid rent at their location on Bowie Street. A GoFundMe was then set up to benefit Eddie, and they even had the audacity to ask people for money after having scammed them. But Eddie and Alexis were just getting started. They brought in a new investor, one of their old customers, to bring in over $5,000 to help save the business, but they didn't spend the money on rent.
And while I was at work, I'd get a notification my card was being used at I've got this charge from y'all, and I haven't shopped with y'all in a long time. And she's looking it up, and she was like, oh, yeah, this is through, Planted Roots. I'm like, excuse me? And she said, yeah, did you happen to loan Planted Roots any money? And I said, well, yeah, I have. And she's like, okay, so we talked about this earlier. And I was like, I'm just now calling you. I haven't talked to you at all. And she said, oh man, that means that this is happening to more than one person.
Tune in next week for part 2 as we uncover more about Planted Roots LLC and finally get some justice.